Does it work? I'm going to tilt this so I don't have to look at myself. Where to begin? 2022 was the hardest year of my life. I've only posted a couple of times on Instagram because honestly I don't have the energy, and I've kind of been lost creatively, and it's been really challenging. I've been doing damage control in a lot of places. In January of last year, on a brownout whim, drunk with some friends, I ordered an Ancestry DNA test kit. They had convinced me in two separate occasions with two separate friends how fucking cool it was. Spit in a tube and send it off to God knows where, and it will unlock a lot of awesome genealogical traits that you possess. For instance, like your proclivity for cilantro on tacos, or you'll learn about where in the world your DNA comes from, or people like you, where your heritage comes from. But in my case, I was handed an existential crisis on a silver platter. I learned that my dad is not my biological father. And it broke something in me that I wasn't prepared to or knew that I would have to deal with. So imagine you're floating in a little boat on the surface of the ocean, and this is like you on your surface level, and you can kind of imagine like a cross section of the earth from like 4th grade, where you have like the ocean, and then there's the crust, like the thin crust. Everybody loves a good thin crust. And then there's like the outer mantle, and then the inner mantle, and then the core, and that's like your deep subconscious soul. The mantle is like your processing subconscious, and then the outer mantle is like your connective tissue that helps you to like create your identity and help you to understand who you are. And then that crust and that surface level is like how you present your ego, this whole thing, to the world. I had like an oil spill or something, and all of this dark stuff was floating out of me onto the surface, and I'm here floating on a little boat like, what is this? And it got to me, physically. I would start crying and convulsing, and I had no idea why. It was bad. On the surface, it was like, okay, new information, processing, whatever. We all kind of do this, get new information that's kind of crazy, but then suddenly inside I had these really weird feelings that I couldn't explain. They were too complicated to put into words, and I sort of lost a lot of motivation to do a lot of things, everything. Back from my drum corps days, the best way I knew how to tie this crazy noisemaker to its physical counterpart was to exercise. So the first thing I did was I kicked up my gym membership again, and I started pumping the iron and doing some cardio. And I worked myself to the point of exhaustion over the course of a month, and I lost a couple pounds. But I realized I hadn't actually processed this new information that I was given. I had made no progress there. And I found a therapist and started doing therapy as a new adventure. And that was an incredibly eye-opening experience. She gave me the latitude in a completely unbiased setting to just dump all of this stuff, all of this weight that I had been carrying around that had been compromising who I was or blocking me from becoming who I'm supposed to be. And I started to make sense of where I was at in life and take like a real hard, honest look at myself. In the process of sort of unpacking this dimension, this new facet of my life, I started to learn tools and journaling on the side and drawing and putting words to these complicated emotions to start like understanding them and make them make sense to me. as a sort of dragon slayer or hill climber, whatever you want to call me, it became important to me to try and unpack a lot of my baggage, or I like to call it weight. And the more weight, the more baggage we carry around, the more compromised our authenticity is. So I kind of became obsessed with this idea of being more authentic, because I've been struggling with it a lot over many years in trying to figure out who I am on this earth, in this form. In the midst of all of this, I started a treatment for my ADHD that actually worked. After the dad stuff happened, I kind of started conquering the family issues and started exercising more, so I was becoming more sort of like clear. And then I started a trial on ADHD medication that worked for me. And all of these things started like compounding, these existential crises and then these self-improvement discoveries started giving me this momentum. And then in July, a couple of things happened. My dad had an emergency surgery. The man who raised me, because I had found out that another man out there is my biological father, but I'll call the man who raised me is my dad. He had an emergency surgery with an infection, and they had to remove his foot, but the infection had already spread to his heart and his lungs and his brain and his kidney, and he was all messed up. And we thought that he might pass away if they couldn't find the infection quickly enough, because of how compromised the rest of his system was becoming. And that threw me into a bit of a crisis because of what had happened earlier in the year. But with my newfound sort of journaling skills, I tried to make sense of my situation and become sort of more appreciative of the universe and take away from every situation what I can, instead of sort of giving up and crumbling or whatever my equivalent would have been. And that was a really scary moment. And then about a week later, President Biden stumbled out next to the director of NASA and unveiled the James Webb Space Telescope photos, the first 5 publicly available images. And that was mind-blowing for me, because as a visual storyteller, the most expensive, scientifically advanced visual storytelling tool that humankind has ever made was sending us the most detailed deep space imagery that we've ever seen. It was telling the story of the universe. And this epiphany hit me like a sack of bricks. We are looking at light that's 13.8 billion years old as the universe, as old as time. We only get like 50 or 60 fun ones. And that's from the point in your life where you kind of get awareness, and that's in like our tweens, teens, and then you get this sweet chunk of time, and then you get to like your 60, 70, 80s, like depending on how healthy you are, where you're too old and wrinkly to experience much of life. And that little sweet spot is like all we get here to like do this whole thing, this experiment, this piece of art. And I realized that I have been spending, doing this authenticity discovery and learning about myself and what I like and who I am and where I want to be. I realized I was carrying around all this weight, and I didn't need to anymore. I don't want to live my tiny little sliver of this experiment in pain. So I began to tackle all of the things in my life that were making me dissatisfied, bitter, unhappy, out of alignment. And I looked at them all, and I determined if this is something I could control or if this was something that was out of my control that I'd have to make peace with. And then I started poofing them away. And it felt really good riding the momentum from my fitness, from my sort of connection with my intuition, my healthier mental state and the sort of high you get from taking accountability for your life. And it felt really, really good. But it was really hard. The biggest challenge for me was to end the relationship I'd been in for 9.5 years. And I don't want to get into too much detail, but it unfortunately devolved into, I never want to see you again territory, which is understandable because getting dumped sucks. And I tried to be as communicative as possible about my experience and my growth, and contextualize it against the backdrop of our relationship, and it just didn't work out. So that happened in September. The next challenge that we're currently dealing with is we share a dog. Vino, you've seen him on my Instagram feed or my stories. And at first we did split custody, and then it moved to I never want to see you again territory after an incident, and she requested to keep him. And I'm really struggling with this right now. 2022 was really hard, y'all. But I've gotten to a point where I can really appreciate the struggles, the pain that are reminders that you're alive, right? You can't have the highs without the lows, blah, 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 all of that stuff. But when you feel pain, it's a reminder that you're feeling part of this experiment. You're participating. You're an active participant. And then at the same time, I'm underscoring a lot of my challenges, but the amount of growth and change and just insane gratitude and love and skills of trusting my intuition and the weight I've lost. I've kind of been absent, but I've lost 45 pounds so far on a journey to get healthy. There are so many blessings that came out of all of this pain. And I really wish that everyone could have the opportunity to actualize in their own way. Because not everybody gets that. Not everybody realizes that the pain that they carry, the weight, the baggage, whatever you want to call it, it's not just the human experience. If you're unsatisfied with your life and there are things that you have control over that you can change, you don't have to live in pain. You can take ownership, you can take control, you can take accountability of your life because you deserve the best life, the best play through this experiment, this whole thing. You deserve the world, and you can have it. Wow, this is rambling. Where are we going in 2023? In 2023, I'm going to hone my intuition. Through all of the work that I did in 2022 to figure out who I am and what I care about and what matters to me, and the courage to execute against these revelations, these crises, these epiphanies, was like hitting the gym in a philosophical way. And I'm a better person for it. And I want to keep doing that. I'm not going to get out of my comfort zone and keep getting out of my comfort zone if I'm sitting idly by, not creating the work that I want to create, not telling the stories that I want to tell or helping others to tell those stories, and not being me. And the best way to be me is to go out and do the things and take the steps and take the action that my intuition tells me I need to take. So I'm going to trust myself and my compass. And I'm going to embrace love. I have a gift, I think, to form meaningful relationships with people, and I've been neglecting so many people for so long out of self-hatred or self-pity or whatever you want to call it, and I want to stop doing that. So I'm going to embrace love. I'm going to trust my compass. I want to continue this journey of exploration with my body and health. This is like the one tool you get. And when my dad had his thing this summer, I was really worried about his situation because of all of the compounding factors that led up to what had to happen. And I kind of was living through that. I was already in the middle of a little bit of a health journey, and I kind of realized I don't know that I want to have that for me. And the best way to take care of yourself tomorrow is to take care of yourself today. And I want to open myself up to the world. And we need to be open and accept the world as it is. I have some really big ideas for the brand Story to Spectacle that I created, and I think I'm going to give myself the time and the energy to explore that. I see a really big gap in our community in Portland, in our community in the United States and globally, where there's a really big lack of empathy. And I think giving voice to folks who have something to say, a story to share, to help somebody else understand a perspective that maybe they will never get the opportunity to understand, or give someone the release valve for something they've been holding onto for a long time, might be a good place to start. So it's very moody right now. I don't have much more to say. I didn't really have much to say when I started this whole thing. It wasn't as focused as I would have liked, but things got a little wild last night. I wish you all the very best. You deserve to have the best life. And I wanted to say thank you for being you and for being around. Happy New Year. And don't be afraid to ask the universe for what you need. And drop me a line sometime.